It's always difficult because you're trying to judge what is out there on the internet, not necessarily what is. Oh, sorry. Can I have a chamomile tea, please? Chamomile tea, please.
Oh my god. He bleeds chamomile teas.
Can't be having caffeine.
Ho, ho, ho. Hello, everyone. Merry Christmas, and welcome to the Co-Conspirators Podcast Christmas Special. I'm your host, Calum, and joining me, as always, are my co-hosts, John.
Hi, everyone.
And Luke.
Season's greetings.
Very nice. Happy holidays, to be politically correct. But as you can probably guess from the title, this episode will take a deep dive into the darker side of one of the world's biggest holidays. Originally created by Christians to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, it has since evolved into a staple of Western culture, celebrating a time where families come together, exchange gifts, eat, drink, and be merry. Skeptics may argue that consumerism has soured the original meaning behind the holiday, encouraging people to spend more and more each year, forgetting those less fortunate than themselves. Regardless, Christmas likely introduced many of our listeners to their very first conspiracy theory, that being the existence of Father Christmas, or Santa Claus for our listeners across the pond.
When you say that's a conspiracy, I take it you just mean he's not from the North Pole, he's actually from Finland, right?
That wasn't exactly where I was going. If you want to explain a little bit further, feel free.
I mean, he just exists. Like, seen him, mate. Saw him down a shopping centre the other day. In his grotto.
To be fair, I've seen many. He's the same guy. He's a time traveller. Has he got many wormholes that allow him to deliver the presents all across the world? Or is it just a team? Is another theory I thought was quite interesting. Santa's not one man. It's a people.
There's another one that he wears red because of Coca-Cola. Like, he was always traditionally blue, but Coca-Cola made him red to fit in with their brand.
Yeah.
I've heard that, the association with Santa and Coca-Cola. I've never made any connection.
Yeah. I think that is the reason he's actually red, although saying that Saint Nick, who is Santa Claus, is Turkish, and Turkey is a very red favourable country, so could be the reason he's just exploring his Turkish roots.
I never knew Saint Nick was Turkish. You learn something new every day.
Saint Nicholas is Turkish, but Santa, the original Santa's
I think it's Dutch.
German.
Yeah, one of those countries, yeah.
It's like Saint George, the patron saint of England, is from Syria. He's a Syrian refugee.
God, I tell you what, some of the EDL lot would not be happy to find.
No.
The thing is, they definitely don't know that either.
No way.
So, going back to Father Christmas, overlooking the child protection issues associated with a large bearded man who let himself into children's bedrooms to deliver presents, there are so many holes in this so-called official narrative. How does one man visit every single house on the planet in just one night? How does he do this while riding a magic sleigh led by a team of reindeer? Does he pay his army of elf helpers? How does he decide who's been naughty and who's been nice? And are the government in on this? All of these questions and more were sure to have plagued many a young conspiracy theorist, especially when their parents stick to the story that Father Christmas is behind the sudden upturn in Amazon deliveries during the month of December. So sorry to any Santa deniers out there. I think the jury's still out on St. Nick, and he lives to fight another day. So kicking off this episode with what I believe could be a whistle-stop tour of every single conspiracy theory we've ever discussed in this podcast is Luke with his festive offering.
Now, like Calum, Christmas for me is the best time of the year. It's the main holiday here in the UK, and everything about it excites me. I love the music, I love the films, except It's a Wonderful Life. I love the excitement leading up to it. I love spending time with family. I love the games, and as an adult, I love the time off work. Also, despite our reputation for bad food on this island, I also have to say I struggle to think of a better meal than a British Christmas dinner. Everything about the holiday is great for me. Christmas is the holy grail. Combination of everything comes together to create such a fantastic event. So that's what I try to do with my theory today. I've picked one that relates to Christmas and also brings in some of the most infamous conspiracies known to man. In somewhat a Co-Conspirators Podcast 2020 wrap, here's your North Korean coronavirus Trump vaccine Christmas conspiracy.
Now that is a mouthful. I'm very excited to hear it.
So for the origins of our story, let's go back in time a bit to December the 5th, 2019. A time when life was a little bit different to it is now. We were more than likely blasting a bit of Wham! Last Christmas and counting down the days until we were off work for the rest of the year. Looking forward to heading back to my hometown to spend time with my family and of course head down the pub with my two co-hosts for a few naughty pints.
Very naughty.
Something that we've sadly not had the luxury of doing recently. Unless you're John, of course. In less important news at the time, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-Un were, of course, in the midst of talks about the aptly named Rocket Man reverting to more of a tiny dancer role and laying his missile arsenal to rest. Talks had, however, stagnated at this point, with North Korea looking unlikely to settle. And then, on the 5th of December, Kim Jong-Un said he would have a Christmas gift for the US. He also stated it was entirely up to the US what Christmas gift it will select to get. Santa Kim was clearly yet to decide whether the USA had been naughty or nice, and he would definitely be checking his list twice once he had done. For if the USA were to give North Korea a favourable deal, they would receive gifts extraordinaire. On the other hand, if they were to be naughty, they would be punished accordingly. Now, I'm not going to claim to be an international relations expert, but in the days that were to come after that, from a North Korean perspective, America had definitely been naughty. So what was the punishment to be? A nuke, a smack bottom, using their top hackers to hack the FBI? Well, actually, Christmas Day came and nothing actually materialised. Or did it?
Ooh.
Oh.
So Japanese officials reported strange missiles being fired by North Korea on Christmas Day, but actually quickly retracted this the same day. I found this quite weird why to do this. Maybe it was just not to worry the American public and Japanese public on Christmas Day. It seems unlikely that they'd, mistakenly see North Korean missiles get fired up into the air and then into the Japanese sea, but you never
Christmas
know.
fireworks.
They clearly don't celebrate Christmas in North Korea, do they? But it's the biggest event in there. Two enemies, two rival countries, with America and South Korea both being crazy over Christmas. But actually, on December the 5th, when Kim Jong-Un said that America was going to get a special Christmas gift, he actually posed for photographs on horseback touring Mount Peak-2, which is an active volcano that sits on the country's border with China. And this might not mean much, but this photo is actually rife with symbolism. This is firstly where his ancestors fought off advancing Japanese and US troops over the years. But what if the symbolism was even deeper than this, and the active volcano that bordered China symbolized something big was about to erupt out of China and North Korea?
Ooh, very symbolic.
It
Also
is.
taking a leaf out of Putin's book, posing on horseback.
Yeah, I thought of that as well.
Yeah, I mean,
You
I'm
didn't say
assuming...
topless.
Oh, that would be a sight if he did it topless. I'm assuming Putin did it much earlier because that photo's been around for ages. But I think, there's some famous North Korean art where, the leaders are riding horseback as well. So maybe Putin did actually copy the Kims. So was this Christmas gift he threatened to be a virus that would cripple the US economy and leave millions dead, whilst their allies China strengthened and bolstered, shifting the world power to the east and to a country that aligns with the North Korean views? I think it's a good question. North Korea, as we know, spent years building a nuclear arsenal, which we've touched on in other podcasts. But yet they knew if they ever used this nuclear arsenal, they would almost certainly be wiped off the face of the earth by the much larger nuclear arsenal the Americans had at their disposal. But what if they were somehow to release and cover up a virus into the world that no one would expect was them, so they could get away with it, but also strengthen themselves? Much like Calum's runs in football, the missiles spotted by the Japanese coming from North Korea could have just been decoys aimed at making people think this was the Christmas gift they threatened. Obviously, this didn't really work, as even though the Japanese saw the missiles, they actually retracted the statement saying they saw the missiles, so it's a bit of a weird one. But obviously, in terms of this virus, we've mentioned the idea of biological warfare, but in terms of the world history, the idea of biological warfare definitely isn't new. The Germans were very capable of creating lab-made viruses in both the First and Second World War, and although supposedly never used them, the Spanish flu did coincidentally coincide with the end of the First World War. And likewise, the Russians and Americans mastered it in the Cold War, but again, supposedly never released anything. If North Korea were to throw money at it, there's probably no doubt they can manufacture a virus and also a vaccine. Their scientists might not have the best reputation, but arguably manufacturing a virus is actually quite a bit easier than manufacturing nukes, which their scientists obviously managed.
Just to chuck a few microbes into a Petri dish and just let it go to work.
Exactly. It can't be that hard, knowing they could never realistically win a war versus America with nuclear power, this could be their best tactic, secretly destroying their enemy. So obviously cases started in Wuhan in November 2019, but, this could just have been a test to see how it would spread, with a vaccine actually readily available for their Chinese allies.
Yeah, I was going to say, testing on your closest allies is hard.
You got to be secretive, haven't you? So a few Chinese lies makes it seem like, they definitely wouldn't have set it up if their allies get it first. But, people obviously question how quickly Wuhan and China managed to deal with the virus. So did they actually have a vaccine available given to them by Kim?
That would be scenes. If a North Korean scientist wanted to make the virus and made the vaccine, would you try a Korean vaccine?
No, I don't think the Chinese would they? I think this is where it falls down. If Kim Jong-Un came to them, like, you know what, mate, we've got this virus, we're going to release it in China first, and then we're going to give you a vaccine. They're like, no, we're not trusting you here, mate. But yeah, so obviously we all know the disease only really started to spread and come to fruition and be reported at the end of December in Wuhan, which is obviously right after Christmas. So oddly enough, around the same time, an unusually high number of North Koreans left the country for tourism. Personally, I didn't realize that North Koreans were allowed to leave the country for tourism to go to the Western world, but they can. They just need special permission, which is rarely granted.
They all off to Wigan by any chance?
I believe they were all off to Wigan, actually, yeah.
Explains why Manchester got it so badly.
So obviously, with the only way to get out of North Korea is to go to China first. A large number of these tourists went to China before then going on world tours, visiting many major countries in the process. Could these really have been North Korean agents injected with the virus, spreading it to the capitalist world?
Original super spreaders.
Potentially. I mean, it's a bit weird, isn't it? Tourism out of North Korea going up at this specific time. It's definitely
an unusual spike, I say.
And yeah, we've mentioned about them wanting to be secretive. To be effective, they really needed no one to suspect them because, the US is like, oh my God, this has come from North Korea. They're just going to, start a war. So obviously the best way to do that was to kill a bunch of, their allies, the Chinese, before infecting the rest of the world. It's a classic case of, sacrificing 3,000 of your own to significantly weaken your enemies, which it has done. And this is a tactic used in almost every war. A bit of cannon fodder, if you may.
And chess. Sacrificing a pawn to win the match. Yeah. Or something
Topical
like that.
Right now, that. So yeah, on the whole vaccine front, obviously as soon as it became a really big deal, all major countries scrambled to make a vaccine. Yet China stayed relatively calm. They never actually entered any serious testing. So you might know, there's this phase 1 testing, phase 2 testing, phase 3 testing. China only ever went into phase 2 testing, which was only tested on 600 people with their vaccine, the Sinovac vaccine. Despite this, they still say their vaccine is already ready to use. Could this just be because their mates in Pyongyang have already handed them the vaccine?
That's all right. So make sure you do a little bit of testing, not too much to arouse suspicion. But just skip the first and the third step. Just go straight into step 2 and that'll be enough.
But I think this is where it gets a bit more interesting. The only other country to sign up for this Chinese Sinovac vaccine is Indonesia. Now, according to a 2013 BBC World Service poll, 42% of Indonesians view North Koreans' influence positively, 29% expressing a negative view. This is the second most favourable opinion of North Korea in the world, after Ghana's. So expect to see the vaccine dropping in Ghana any day soon.
How random's that?
I have no idea. I actually fully looked at this poll because it gives you a list of all the countries, and Ghana was 90% in favour of the UK, but at the same time 60% in favour of North Korea.
What the hell?
It's almost like that small African village. I'm not sure whereabouts it is. It's absolutely crazy for Donald Trump.
Oh, I mean, yeah, you always get these weird.
Camilla, I think.
Oh, well, funny enough, North Korea were big on Charles and Diana. And then there's that, I think in Papua New Guinea, you've got the Prince Philip Island that we...
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
There's going to be some mourning for them soon.
Wonder how they react when they realise he's actually coronavirus. Will they drop the celebrations?
Well, they're all right. They haven't caught it yet. So. But yeah, moving on to 2020, there was obviously quite big news coming out of North Korea with the health scare to Kim. Again, could have been to distract from them actually releasing the virus. But apart from this, they've actually gone quite under the radar in 2020, especially on the whole anti-American front. As we've all know, they've dominated the news stories for around a decade in their kind of rivalry with America. North Korea does, of course, claim that they have no COVID cases, which would support the theory they released it and had the antidote ready. Whether you believe that or not, I think most people wouldn't. But what does get interesting is South Korean intelligence agencies have also claimed last month that they foiled attempts by North Korean hackers to disrupt attempts to develop a COVID-19 vaccine. And that's definitely food for thought. They don't want a vaccine.
I saw it on the news, I think, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess what do you guys think? Is Santa Kim really the reason we can't go out for a nice sit-down Big Mac?
Sit-down Scotch egg. Not even... well, I say, first of all, top marks for doing a basic a whistle-stop tour of everything we've covered this far on the podcast. It's funny that Christmas is the thing that seems to link all of these together. It's very apt for our festive podcast. And also, it's nice to look back and see we've covered quite a lot in a relatively young podcast. So hats off to both of us. Or all three of us, even. With myself.
Both of us.
But yeah, I mean, I think, of course, the big phrase that comes to mind mind when you talk about this was definitely correlation and causation, whether it's just a set of random events that seems you can sort of weave a narrative through, or it is actually exactly how you say it is. In North Korea, they were so angered by Donald Trump's attitude towards them, they decided to release a virus, test it out on their mate first just to make sure it was deadly enough, sacrifice a few for and basically watch the chaos unfold, and whilst slipping completely under the radar in 2020, which is quite an apt point, because you do think, thinking back, when the media didn't have much to talk about, it was always banging on about fear-mongering towards North Korea, and now they've, apart from the Kim health scare, with precious little said about them. I think there's one report about how coronavirus might actually be ravaging through the country, but you don't know what to believe with the media these days.
I think it's really impossible to know what's happening there in regards to coronavirus. But yeah, the thing that I find the most interesting is, he 100% for fact said that, he's got a Christmas gift for America and they can decide whether it's going to be a good or bad gift. So, he's threatened that, and you've got to do something. You can't not do something after saying that, otherwise it's a bit pathetic. Like the missiles firing into the sea that Japan saw and then retracted. That would be the most empty threat of all time, You've got a Christmas present for you. We're going to do what we've been doing for years anyway, and have no impact.
I do remember that story hitting the news, I think, or Japan mentioning about North Korean missile testing, if it's just firing them into the sea, unless they're trying to spread coronavirus aquatically.
Maybe they hit a submarine.
But I wonder what the gift would have been if America had been favourable towards them. Maybe go on the PS5 early.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, to be fair. Like North Korea, Kim Jong-Un just coming out like a wrapped up Christmas present and handing it over to Donald Trump.
Realistically, what could North Korea really offer apart from maybe being less hostile?
I mean, yeah, that's exactly it. I'd assume that they're years behind in technology, so they're not going to have anything that America's going to want. No trade deals either. Like, you're not going to want to trade much with them.
But yeah, so said because of the comparative power of the two, everything they say is always basically empty threats, and they're not going to be able to back up or put their money where their mouth is. If they fire one nuke, America has to press the button. They've got like 60 heading towards them. I think I'll go into my rating, and it might be a Co-Conspirators podcast first, because I'm going to go for back-to-back 10 out of 10. So I do think the last podcast I gave Luke a 10. I'm going to do another 10 just because of the fact that it's topical. It recaps a lot of the big talking points of not only 2020, but our conspiracy world in general and everything we've touched on the podcast. And it's all got a nice little Christmas sparkle to it. I say sparkle. It's got like a bird, limp Brussels sprout. Through the eyes of the majority of the world, unless you're Bill Gates, you think everything's going to plan, but that's what we talked about last episode. As for believability,
I do think, that they must know that they can never engage in a proper nuclear war with America. Well, they must have thought, maybe our only real option is biological warfare, but...
It's a good point. If they were that hell-bent on causing havoc to the US, and look how badly the US are handling it now, if they coming from us Brits, I mean, it's sort of pot calling kettle black, but we've got to hang on to what we can, especially in this conspiracy era we live in. But if they have done it, they had pulled it off. They've pulled off the heist or the plot of the century, because no one is pointing the finger at North Korea whatsoever. They seem to have got away scot-free.
Yeah, everyone's blaming China. It's like one of them Scooby-Doos where, you pull the freaking face off the mask of Xi Jinping, who's getting the lame, and it's actually Kim Jong-Un on horseback as well.
I just think I would have gotten away for it if it wasn't those meddling co-conspirators. We're the ones that break the news in North Korea behind the vaccine. Behind the virus as well. But it's interesting thinking, because it's the biggest also misdirection ever with managing to pin the blame on China, who actually tested it out on a few of their unsuspecting Wuhan residents and managed to somehow link it to a guy eating bat soup or whatever it was.
They picked the players where they still eat bat. It was smart. They
did think it through. Well, Wuhan Institute of Virology, having done lots of research into coronaviruses.
I mean, I think, just because of that alone, no one ever really thought to point the finger elsewhere, which is surprising, because you thought if there's like some major event like this, like people would instantly think of North Korea in some way or another.
It shows how we've underestimated their scientific capabilities.
Exactly.
But as I say, it does seem a bit more like just a collection of coincidence events. Remember, we had the theory that America actually was behind the coronavirus, or unwittingly spread it.
In the military games.
Yeah. So it seems like we're pointing the finger at everyone, but not North Korea. So I might bump my believability up one, just to be pretty sneaky of them. But overall believability, I'll go for a 3.5 out of 10. I'll be a little bit generous.
Fair enough. Yeah. What about you, John?
I think the overall theory is brilliant. As we've said, they've kind of gone under the radar, not just with coronavirus, but with everything. So this would be the ultimate way to get the headlines back. Came out with Kim Jong-Un admitted to creating coronavirus.
If he
It wouldn't
admitted,
even be mad.
if he
Just be
admitted,
like,
he'd
fair
just get
play, man.
instantly killed. Surely.
He just
That's
didn't
enough
pay
to send the
attention.
truth. We're going to war. Like me and you are getting drafted in if that happens.
I'd happily go to be fair, shutting down the pub.
Just applaud him.
I'd take his head back to the local pub. But yeah, so I think the overall theory, and obviously tying in Trump as well, saying it's Trump's Christmas present. Normally Christmas presents, you stop playing with them by Boxing Day, but they've kind of stuck around a bit. So yeah, I think it's a really good theory. I'm going to go for a 9.5 out of 10. In terms of believability, it's got to be a bit lower. I think, as we said, none of us are really scientists. We don't really know how easy it is to create a virus like this. So yeah, would North Korea got the capability of doing this? Maybe, I'm not really sure. So it's quite hard to gauge the believability on the front of whether they physically could do it. I think in terms of whether they would, it's such a big risk. And like we say, China got affected really badly in the early days. So to intentionally or unintentionally have such an effect on their biggest ally was always a risk and a bit of a weird way of doing it. But it has worked in the long run if it's true. But yeah, believability, I'm going to have to go quite low, I'm afraid, with a 2 out of 10.
Just on the topic of China, quickly, they're basically back to normal now, aren't they?
Yeah, pretty much totally back to normal.
Yeah, I had a look earlier. I think they had like 12 cases.
Yeah, I think they've also got like one of the lowest amount of cases and deaths per capita in the whole world. Because obviously, they had like 4,000 deaths, but they've got like 1.5 billion people.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think, I found this news article about Kim Jong-Un threatening with a Christmas gift, and I just found it really interesting. And then doing a bit more research, just got more and more interesting. So I really enjoyed it. And for that reason, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. I love North Korean conspiracies because you just never know what's true. And it's also modern. It's just weird as hell to think that a country like this can still exist like today when, the whole entire rest of the world is almost incredibly transparent. And this whole country we know nothing about. In terms of believability, yeah, it's not going to score very highly. One thing I will say is, like I mentioned earlier, they've built this nuclear arsenal and they know they can't use it without getting wiped to the face of the earth. So if they really are hell-bent on destroying America, which we're basically told by America they are hell-bent on destroying America, they'd want to do it secretly. And, this would be one way of doing it. And I mean, a lot of people do believe that China's done this to wipe out America. So, why not North Korea? But obviously, China's got a bit of a better scientific background. The country's so crazy, you can never rule anything out. So I'm going to go for a 4 out of 10. And, if we see this vaccine in Ghana, I might up it to a 10 out of 10. Right. That was your conspiracy on Santa Kim. Now it's time for Santa Calum to give you a treat of a conspiracy.
Oh, I like that. We all know the 21st December is the Winter Solstice, the day of the year with the least amount of daylight and longest night. Scientifically speaking, this is the result of the Earth's North Pole reaching its furthest point from the Sun as it rotates about its axis. Aside from being the shortest day of the year, the Winter Solstice is a day of significance in many cultures and religions, thought to signify the death and rebirth of the sun, and has inspired many rituals and celebrations dating back as far as recorded history goes. Astronomy fans are no doubt aware of the astrological phenomenon set to take place this upcoming solstice, just a few days away at the time of recording. For the unaware, I think namely John and Luke, because we discussed this earlier and they didn't have a clue what I was on about, the 21st December will host a conjunction of the planets Saturn and Jupiter, whose orbits will align in such a way that they appear to form a quote-unquote double planet. I think is a scientific term, it was on the articles as I read, that will shine much brighter than other celestial bodies. Normally, planetary conjunctions are fairly commonplace in astrology, because in this instance, Jupiter orbits the Sun in a speedy 12 years compared to Saturn's pedestrian 30. So if you do the maths, a conjunction between the two planets will occur every 20 years, thereabouts, as Jupiter effectively laps its neighbouring planets. So why is this particular conjunction so special? Well, this occurrence will be the closest the two planets have gotten since the medieval times of 1226. The planets will appear to be just 0.1 degrees apart, less than the diameter of a full moon, despite realistically being hundreds of millions of miles apart in the vast emptiness of space. But from our position on Earth, looking up at the stars, they will be incredibly close, appearing to form such double planets. Just for those interested in watching, NASA say that the Great Conjunction will be shining brightly shortly after sunset, low in the southwestern sky as viewed from the northern hemisphere. Jupiter currently appears brighter than any star in the sky, and Saturn, while slightly dimmer, is still just as bright as the brightest stars, but is identified by being a continuous brightness rather than blinking as normal stars do. So, of course, this is a little bit of context, and it might seem very unfitting for a conspiracy theory podcast, even one about festive conspiracies. So you might be wondering, how am I going to turn this into a conspiracy? Well, fear not. Listen on and all should be revealed, no doubt in a very roundabout manner, which is kind of typical of my offerings on the podcast. All right, so time to introduce Project Bluebeam. Any of you heard of this conspiracy? Nope. Well, prepare to be enlightened. It's a bit of a heavy one. So you might remember Project Blue Book from our UFO conspiracies. This isn't even a conspiracy theory. It's an actual US Air Force program designed about the study of UFOs that ran through the 50s and 60s, are tasked with identifying and assessing whether UFOs posed a genuine threat to the world, essentially. This was in peak Cold War times, peak fear-mongering, etc., etc. So Project Bluebeam takes some of the elements of this study, combines it with classic conspiracy tropes, and throws a festive cherry on the top for good measure. Project Bluebeam was first published. It's one of the rare occurrences, I think, we've actually done a genuine, proper conspiracy by a conspiracy theorist, actually taking a look at someone who claims to be a conspiracy theorist, like someone like David Icke or Alex Jones. This is a direct look of some of his works. It's quite interesting. So it was first published by science fiction author and renowned theorist Serge Monast. Not sure if you've heard of him.
Serge Monast, yeah.
Glad to hear
Very
it.
famous in Latin-speaking conspiracy world.
Serge Monast. Serge Monast.
Rather unfortunate we say it like that, but it's Serge, S-E-R-G-E, Monast. I think he's a French guy. Serge Monast. I think that's where you find all the answers. He's talking out of his ass. Not to disrespect his good name in the conspiracy world too much. But he's been associated with various commentaries on the dangers of a world government or New World Order, as well as the Freemasons and other nefarious groups. So, peak Illuminati business. So, Project Bluebeam alleges that NASA, with help from the United Nations, is planning on implementing a new age religion with the Antichrist at its helm. This would usher in a new world order via a technologically simulated second coming of Christ. According to Monast's original 1994 publication, Project Bluebeam would be the culmination of a four-stage process, similar to our secondary school's detention process, in title only. Stage 1, was that a break time suspension?
I think about a 5-minute catch-up.
Got to hand in the homework you didn't do. So stage 1 details the process of breaking down all archaeological knowledge. Earthquakes will be artificially triggered at precise locations across the globe, which is supposed to reveal new discoveries that will finally explain the error of fundamental religious doctrines. Psychological preparations for that first step have already been implemented with the films 2001: A Space Odyssey, the Star Trek series, and Star Wars, all of which deal with invasions from space and the coming together of all nations to repel the invaders. Another film, Jurassic Park, also included in this conspiracy, claims to have dealt with the theories of evolution and claims that God's words are lies. So helping to dissuade those from following these old religions. The second stage involves a gigantic quote-unquote space show with three-dimensional optical holograms and sounds, laser projection of multiple holographic images to different parts of the world, each receiving a different image according to the predominating regional, national, religious faith.
So a sort of light show.
The light show up in the sky, the lasers and all sorts.
Wait to see
It gets even better. It's basically tailored to your religion of choice.
Oh, lovely.
What a treat. So this quote-unquote new God's voice will be speaking in all languages, meaning no one's excluded, very inclusive environment.
I think they shouldn't tailor it to your country's religion. I think they should mix it up. So, like, for example, in the UK, where obviously main religion is Christianity, they should just have butter in the sky. And everyone's like, fuck's sake, we don't get our light wrong.
The NASA agents quickly typing out lines of code to try and sort the light show out. Cancel it, we'll wait till the next solstice.
What, 800 years?
Yeah. Apparently this is going to be achieved using top secret technology that can understand and manipulate physio-psychological responses based upon extensive studies of the anatomy and electromechanical composition of the human body.
Thing with this though is, like, surely they've had to test this. Like, surely they're not going to be like, oh yeah, we're going to do this like this crazy light show, and they must have tested it in the sky at some point, unless they've just done it over like an unpopulated area. That's
interesting because there have been some reports on conspiracy forums here. They're seeing anomalies in the sky with strange lights, maybe attributed to UFO.
The Aurora Borealis is when the code broke, and it's just been stuck up there ever since.
Yeah, it's a perpetual loop. I think that is actually quite similar to what it will look like, the Northern Light, from my imagination. But there's also an instance where apparently a giant city was beamed over China in the sky, so I'm not sure how truthful that was, but that would certainly raise some conspiracy eyebrows with regards to this theory.
wouldn't half raise a few eyebrows if I saw friggin' London in the night sky. More than my eyebrows rate.
Yeah, so basically the studies it's these secretive agents have been apparently testing have allowed them to manipulate the chemical and biological properties of the human brain, which has the capability to allocate electronic wavelengths for every person and every society and culture that can induce suicidal thoughts if the person doesn't comply with the dictates of the New World Order. So this theory was first postulated in the 1990s before the invention of deep fake and other AI technologies. This step could be implemented using sort of technologies we have to hand and also the assistance of natural phenomena like the aurora borealis. So we have no idea what sort of blacklist technology experimental New World Order projects have at their hands. You think back to the alien tech that NASA supposedly harvested from Area 51. Some people would say they managed to get it up and running. We may never know.
I can just imagine all the UFOs that crashed on Earth were just carrying these ready-to-go light shows. You got to have your keys, your wallet, and your light show and your UFO.
Never leave house without my light show. It's just part of this big corporate entity that's spanning the universe. They're all salesmen trying to pitch their light show for a new generation of entertainment. There's actually the second coming of the Antichrist. So then, the third stage is quote-unquote telepathic electronic two-way communication. It suggests that satellite technology would direct artificial thoughts into the multigenic field, achieving the mind control of the entire planet. The individual's only resistance would be constantly questioning the motivation behind their thoughts and not acting upon thoughts which they consider to be outside their own ideological, religious and moral boundaries. So basically not challenging the status quo. Again, though, we've seen how politics, social media, advertising and celebrity culture can influence people's thought patterns, especially in the light of the coronavirus pandemic, this age of public shaming and also just constant surveillance, everything being caught on camera. So we know that humans are very social creatures, can often succumb to peer pressure and a desire to conform to societal norms. And as Luke discussed last episode, CIA projects like MKUltra have experimented with mind control techniques, and who knows what other projects are hiding in the classified files. So finally, stage 4, the big one, the after-school detention for an extended duration of time. I think you'd rather an after-school detention than what's contained in stage 4, that's for sure. So fans of universal supernatural manifestations may disagree. So it contains 3 different orientations. One is to make mankind believe that an alien invasion is about to occur at every major city on Earth, provoking each major nation to use its nuclear weapons in order to strike back. This way, the United Nations Court will require that all those nations which launch nuclear weapons disarm immediately when the invasion is shown to have been false. And how, you might ask, will the United Nations know the invasion is false? They will have staged it, or a conspiracy with NASA, or in the aim of ushering in a new world order. The second is to make the Christians believe that the rapture is going to occur with the supposed divine intervention of an alien civilization coming to rescue Earthlings from a savage and merciless demon. Its goal will be to dispossess all significant opposition to the implementation of the New World Order in one major stroke within hours of the beginning of the Sky Show. Finally, the third orientation is a mixture of electronic and supernatural forces. The waves used at the time will hijack major appliances to allow quote-unquote supernatural forces to travel through optical fibers, television cables and phone lines in order to reach the global population. We'll also have embedded chips already in place. So this will help to influence your brain into thinking that these satanic ghosts really exist and would push populations to the edge of hysteria and madness, drowning them in a wave of suicide, murder, and permanent psychological disorders. So this event is sometimes referred to as the Night of 1,000 Stars, and we'll see worldwide populations be made ready for the new Messiah to re-establish order and peace at any cost, even at the abdication of freedom. So this Night of 1,000 Stars is where the conspiracy starts to come full circle with the context provided at the start of my theory. I'm sure we all know the story of Jesus' birthday on December the 25th. What you may not be aware of is the speculation surrounding the exact date of Christ's birth, with some claiming dates as late as August or September. Naturally, I think it's so long ago, it might get a bit muddled, especially with unfinished records and trying to decipher text written on stone slabs.
So even the same calendar, I guess. I mean, he was alive at the same time as the Romans, and I'm assuming like October was originally like the 8th month rather than the 10th month. So
funny you should mention that. I was just about to come on to that. So excellent powers of deduction there. Part of this confusion may in fact be due to the transition from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, system widely used in today's climate. To cut a long story short, it's quite complicated, but the Julian calendar that began with the vernal equinox was set at March 25th. So that would be basically New Year, I think.
Mhm.
Jesus' conception has always been believed to have been at the start of the year, which would mean that his birth would have been on December 25th of the Julian calendar, so 9 months later. In Julian times, this is also the winter solstice. I'm not sure how they worked that one out, but that's what I read. But the eventual transition to the Gregorian calendar, when you take into account leap years, etc., divisible by 4, the winter solstice actually fell on the 21st of December, while Christmas Day held its place on the 25th. So once you've cleared up that calendar, all you need to know is that his birthday is still December 25th and the solstice on the 21st, which coincides with the upcoming planetary conjunction. But on that fateful night, wherever it may have been, one aspect of the original Christmas story was a journey embarked upon by the wise men. Any ideas where this might be going?
Wait, say again.
So we're talking about the wise men. Like, what compelled the wise men to enter the Christmas story?
The star,
Ah.
North Star.
Yes, that's right. So these wise men were just that, very wise, possessing knowledge of mathematics and astronomy, amongst other things. These knowledgeable fellows were believed to have noticed an incredibly bright shining star in the night sky. Upon noticing such an astronomical anomaly, the only logical decision would be to follow the star and see what mystery it beheld. In this case, the smart blokes believed that such a star bore witness to the birth of a great king. Lo and behold, following the star to the town of Bethlehem, they came across the baby Jesus, whom they hailed as King of the Jews. Now, it was clear that this was no ordinary star, so what could have caused this phenomenon? Surely not another super conjunction, right?
Ooh.
Well, believe it or not, both medieval and modern astrologists seeking answers about the planetary conjunctions and the fabled Star of Bethlehem have calculated that another conjunction of the planets occurred around 6 BC. This time was an even bigger event. It was a triple conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars, making it even rarer.
Oh, baby, a triple.
Yeah, got that triple kill. Adding further weight to the potential symbolism is the assertion that the transition from BC to AD timelines did not directly coincide with Jesus' birth, as one would assume when you translate that BC is before Christ and AD is Anno Domini, or year of the Lord's birth. Many scholars now accept that Jesus most likely born between 4 and 6 BC. So maybe the earliest recorded examples of a grand conjunction of planets really did cause the Star of Bethlehem. Regardless, we know that the powers that be are suckers for symbolism and ritual. So what better time to stage the second coming of Christ than to coincide with another incredibly rare conjunction of planets, especially since bright lights are at the centre of their plans. After all, NASA informed the world about the upcoming super conjunction and were named by Serge Monast as the prime co-conspirators involved in Project Bluebeam. Perhaps this is a ploy to direct as many eyes as possible to the sky on this particular solstice to ensure maximum exposure to the second coming of Christ and manipulating masses of people into blindly ushering in a new world order. That the conjunction falls on the solstice, with its paganistic connotations, just adds further credibility to the New World Order and Illuminati appeal. After all, it was President Ronald Reagan who delivered an address to the United Nations, suggesting that the countries of the world could come together when facing a common enemy. That common enemy, of course, was referring to an alien invasion. He said, this is a quote, "Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." Was this 1987 speech a Freudian slip of the tongue, hinting at the plans to usher in a new world order, right around the time Monast first introduced his Project Bluebeam theory? After all, before becoming president, Reagan was a Hollywood actor. We all know how deeply intertwined Hollywood is with the deep state and the Illuminati, and Hollywood loves Christmas movies, so go figure. Before I throw this one over to my co-host, I'll just say that at the time of recording, the event hasn't yet taken place. Depending on the editing turnaround, we could be looking at a very different world post-Project Bluebeam, assuming this theory is 100% true and comes to fruition exactly as described. Maybe conspiracy podcasts will be outlawed in this new world order for daring to challenge the status quo. Only time will tell. So what do you guys think? Quite a lot to unpack there.
I mean, yeah, it's absolutely crazy, but I was just looking at the weather now, and it seems here in the UK it's going to be a bit rainy on a Monday, so I'm not sure we're actually going to get a chance to see the conjunction, which is annoying if it only happens in this fashion once every 800 years. It's typical that we're going to miss it, but if any of our worldwide listeners have a non-cloudy day or non-cloudy night, enjoy that.
It also begs the question, what effect will this water have on the mass amounts of electronics and lasers and stuff they're trying to...
I'm looking forward to us whipping out our nuclear submarines. So it's about time they finally got some use. Although the UN's quickly going to sanction us.
I'm sure they're itching to finally give Project Trident the green light to fire.
Yeah, I think overall, I'll start my score now. I think it's a really interesting theory. I feel like, it's just so fascinating when you just have coincidences like this, like, you know, these two planets are aligning, huge bright light in the sky, just like it was when Jesus was supposedly born. You know, if I do see it, I might walk out and follow it and see how far I get. Probably end up in the English Channel, but you know.
But if it's Jesus, he might be able to give you the power to walk on water.
You never know.
How would you know when to stop when you're following a star?
I don't know. I think obviously back in those days, the stuff by the star constellations, but there's a large margin for error. It could end up in the wrong town.
Well, you could literally just follow a star, and then like 2 minutes into your journey, you just end up in a pub because you walked into a pub door, and then you're like, "Oh, is this it?" Oh, fair enough.
In all the depictions, I mean, this is going back to Bible's designed for childhood. The star was literally beaming down light onto the stables. I'm not sure it was that precise. But again, it was so long ago. Maybe just directed them to Bethlehem, asked a few people for directions. Has anyone been born recently? Anyone holy? Anyone who would accept these gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh? Of course, got pointed to the first stable, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I do think it's quite cool that it's falling on the winter solstice. That's really interesting, and I mean, either a big coincidence or, you know, it's what their plan is. But yeah, I feel like if any event ever fell on the winter solstice, you're going to get conspiracies like this come out of it. But overall, you know, it ties in a lot of stuff. It ties in Christmas, it ties in paganism, it ties up planets, and, you know, the whole Illuminati New World Order. Like, the world's going to change, even though it already changed a lot this year. So it's going to change again. I'm going to score it a 9 out of 10.
Oh, very good.
In terms of believability, I guess in some respects, it's like I probably wouldn't score the idea of the New World Order planning on taking over the world in my lifetime very highly at all. So I don't think that alone would even get a 4 out of 10. But the fact that they're going to be planning it on Monday, you know, it's probably going to score. If they were to pick a date, they would, you know, winter solstice, Jupiter and Saturn aligning. Why not pick that day, especially when potentially be the same point in time that the shepherds followed the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction or whatever to Jupiter-Saturn-Mars conjunction to Jesus. So it's fitting, and it would be very symbolistic. I guess I can bite my words here, but I'm going to score it a 2 out of 10. We'll see come Monday, see what happens.
Yeah, so it's an ominous one. Maybe you should have recorded this a little bit earlier to give people some more warning. What about you, John?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the most complex theories we've ever had on this podcast. There's just so much to it, as Luke kind of pointed out. Even modelling it on secondary school detention, so I got a lot of time for that.
Spent a lot of time in detention, did you?
No, not really. Not as much as you.
That's true. Did manage to get to the elusive stage 4.
I think also the fact that it, you know, supposedly going to happen on Monday. I think it makes it even more evil because Mondays are bad enough as it is. And then to be ushering in the New World Order and having all this go on a Monday, it's just sickens me.
Just go for a Friday, man. Yeah. Everyone's off. They'll be a bit more willing to accept it.
Nah, they got
exactly.
If Saturn and Jupiter are aligning on Tuesday, the 21st of December, they'd have waited another 1,000 years until it aligns on a Monday.
Yeah. Or maybe it's to increase maximum acceptance, so people think, I really don't want to go to my job. I really hope that the Antichrist comes to prevent me from going.
So yeah, I think overall theory score is going to get an 8.5 out of me. I really enjoyed that one. I think believability is tough. You got to take a lot of stuff at face value, not least just religion in general. So yeah, it's difficult. There's so many things to tie in. I'm going to struggle to score it very high. Well, I do think if you were going to try and promote this New World Order, you would like a common enemy. I think it is a good point, and it would be the way they would choose to do it should it ever happen. So I'll bump it up a bit for that. But I think I'm going to have to still go with a quite low 2 out of 10.
That's fair enough, yeah. So just almost too much coincidence, I think. So many events having to all align perfectly along with 2 gigantic planets. But yeah, one thing I will add, I didn't include this in the theories, I didn't think it was that relevant, but something that was mentioned was apparently one of the triggers for this would be a mass economic collapse, which would allow the transition from paper money to a new currency, basically meaning people would be even more dependent on the state for their money. And you think with the global economic climate as it is thanks to coronavirus, that could be another catalyst. And I think now we're all going to contactless payments, avoid touching ATMs and stuff, just food for thought.
True.
But then again, they also require us all being microchips. They haven't exactly rolled out the vaccine. Actually, they have rolled it out incredibly fast, but it's not going to get to the majority of the healthy population unless they're trying to be elitist. And you think all of the old people that are in politics are going to try and create a massive super oldies.
Super army of the elderly and disabled.
And the compromise are just clinging desperately onto power. But yeah, I think I really enjoyed researching this one. When I first saw it, I think, yeah, I could be able to get a short theory out of it, but it just kept growing and growing as I did more research and added a few of my own observations in along with the whole Jesus element and the Star of Bethlehem. That was quite interesting. And it was crazy to think they were able to plot that a celestial or a grand conjunction would have occurred 2,000 plus years ago, let alone observing one in medieval times in 1226. And I think that we might be able to witness one is, albeit for a drizzly British night that might ruin the spectacle, let alone the light show, is fascinating. We'll be looking up to the sky if I get off work in time. It'd be pretty peak if I missed it. I'm hoping to be stepping out the doors and just seeing Jesus walking down, like aliens and UFOs, just everything going to complete chaos. That'll be what a way to end my Monday. And I think for that reason, just all the things it ties in. You've got religion, you've got New World Order, which was a very hot conspiracy topic, astronomy, Christmas as well, you think, and the real meaning of Christmas, not the commercialized version. I'm going to give it, blow my own trumpet a bit, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. So I think as I'm following the trend with you guys, even though this is my theory that I created, showing a deep dive in the scores from the conspiracy theory overall to the believability. And yes, well, I can point at certain elements. We haven't actually been seeing many earthquakes recently, which is supposed to be the big precursor to this one, to basically cast doubt on all world religions. So I think that's one stumbling block that you can't really get to point if it's going to follow this exact course of events. We have had the monoliths, I guess. That could be some sort of alien religion trying to tease people in this new direction. But of course, they're just going to be art installations, so that's stupid like that. But okay, again, it's always coincidences here. It's interesting to actually plot the points. You do have to remember this guy was a writer, so he's got a good way with words, has Mr. Monas. He's got an incredible imagination.
Incredible ass as well.
But as several commentators and other theorists have noticed, it bears a very similar resemblance to an episode of Star Trek. So I'm not sure if it's just scientific talking here or there's a Star Trek episode from the 70s. So we've just seen that. I think, yeah, we can make a brilliant conspiracy theory out of this that fool the masses. But there is a lot of New World Order symbolism out there, and I think with the way the world's going, with much more control over people's livelihoods, and coronavirus pandemic arguably bringing the world into a greater state of collaboration. If you disbelieve Luke's theory that it was all started by North Korea and China, but as we've seen countries trying to collaborate to create vaccines, distribute, etc., etc. It could be. Is that a precursor for a New World Order, or is it just people generally trying to help each other out?
Why do you think they kept Roswell so secretive? It's because it was actually Kim Jong-Un, and he's the only one to ever escape Area 51. That's why he's so secretive. I want to wipe him off the face of the earth.
Is it holed up in North Korea with a load of alien technology? It's the only place safe enough for people not to be able to find him.
They're not actually building news; they're just building light shows.
Now that would be a turn up if that was the case. Unfortunately, as believable as that sounds, my score is going to have to probably follow suit with yours. I'll go slightly higher because, because it's my theory and I want to. There are certain elements in there that could contain a degree of truth, like manipulating the masses, blindly accepting what's coming, what the powers that be want. So I'm going to go for a 3 out of 10.
For some reason, every time I picture a light show, all I can think of is like being in a nightclub and having a rave. And that's what I'm just picturing on the Monday night.
That's what I'm picturing as well. I'd say imagine UFOs and Antichrist and satanic ghosts or whatever they would.
Hopefully, if they're tailoring it to everyone's religion, they're also going to tailor some tunes to everyone's country. So Will Brooks on Fire is going to come on in the UK and everyone's just going to go mental.
If that comes on, I'll be accepting the New World Order with open arms.
That's how you unite a nation.
So, regular listeners of the show will by now be very familiar with how we like to end this podcast, and that is with our fan favourite game, Conspiracy, and a special festive edition this week.
Whee.
I say a special edition, it's not quite the change of format we've experimented with in the past, it's just the usual Conspiracy, but Christmas themed.
Sounds good to me.
Glad to hear it. So, are you ready to hear the 3 conspiracies? Yeah, before we get into that, I'll just explain for any new listeners. Essentially, this game is where the host, me, finds 3 conspiracy theories related to the topic, 2 of which are genuine conspiracy theories, been posted online. Someone either believes them or has at least put enough thought into them to conjure up a conspiracy theory to try and mislead others. And 1, the host has made it themselves, and it's my co-host's job to identify the false conspiracy, known as the conspiracy. So, jumping in then. Number 1, the Christmas film It's a Wonderful Life was investigated by the FBI for supposed communist tendencies.
Ooh.
Number 2, NASA used the codename Santa Claus for 3 UFOs spotted during the lunar landings.
Ooh.
And number 3, the FBI employs tech giants Amazon and Google to spearhead Operation Santa Claus, centering around the mass rollout of smart speakers to homes across the US and then the world.
Good news for you is after those first 3, I have absolutely no idea.
Well, I guess you'll be wanting to hear a little bit more then.
Please.
Any in particular? So just go back through in order.
Order's good.
Order would be nice.
Bit of order.
Order. Will the right honourable gentleman please present the details of the conspiracy? An FBI program aimed at detecting and neutralising communist influences in Hollywood decided that the film It's a Wonderful Life employed communist propaganda tricks, namely the quote-unquote smearing of values and institutions thought to be particularly American and the glorification of anti-American or pro-communist values. So I'm sure you must know the story of It's a Wonderful Life. I'm sure you're very surprised if you haven't seen it.
I've never seen it.
You're taking the mickey.
I've never seen it. Old, isn't it?
It's on every Christmas. It's the 50s.
Hey, there's some absolute modern day classics like I can't even think of The Cruise.
He's busy watching Home Alone 8.
Highly recommend it. It's a very emotional film, very heartwarming. Do you want a plot summary, or do you have at least enough of an idea of?
I genuinely have no idea about anything that goes
You
on.
don't know what
in
it's
that film.
about.
I mean, it's about Christmas. I know that.
Oh yeah, that's the theme of the podcast. I hope so.
That is a shamble.
Basically, the protagonist, George Bailey, is a down-on-his-luck banker. He's struggling to provide for a family, and his job's under threat when a much larger business comes to try and take over his community bank. This leads him to contemplate suicide, which is quite dark for a Christmas film. But he's visited by a guardian angel who shows him what the world would be like if he does commit suicide or he'd never been born, and how much better the world is with him still alive.
Right. So I've just looked online just to see what his ratings are. So I've typed in It's a Wonderful Life, and the first thing that comes up on my Google is it's showing tomorrow in Odeon, Milton Keynes. So there you go. I think it's got a link to the Illuminati for sure.
Or maybe the FBI are accidentally exposing some of their own plans, if we believe this theory. So the evidence for these so-called communist tendencies is the struggle between misanthropic banking manager Mr. Potter, he's the antagonist, and our protagonist George Bailey, seen as an attack on capitalism, given the way that Henry Potter's aggressive business plans were depicted compared to Mr. Bailey's small community bank. As for supporting anti-American values, Bailey's descent into depression was characterized as a subtle attempt to magnify the problems of the so-called common man in society, which may then see him buying into communism and everything being equal. We all know how well communism works. So, number 2, this is the NASA UFOs and codenamed Santa Claus. A former NASA employee claims that they walked into a restricted area where they developed the film for the moon landings and saw what she believed were UFOs in the pictures. She says they were codenamed Santa Claus because there's 3 of them. Don't know why particularly be Santa Claus for 3, but that's what she says, this employee. She also supports her argument by saying that one of the people who was part of the quarantine team for the returning astronauts also confirms that they saw UFOs land shortly after the lunar module. NASA have also been accused of airbrushing thousands of photos that contain quote-unquote anomalies before they are released to the public, and she's extrapolated this to mean anomalies being both UFOs and, remember our moon episode, that the glass bases and structures on the dark side of the moon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're supposedly in the photos as well, so maybe Santa Claus has a secret base on the moon. And number 3, so this is the FBI colluding with Amazon and Google for Operation Santa Claus and their mass rollout of smart speakers and voice recognition technology. So both the Amazon Echo and the Google Home launched in the Novembers of 2014 and 2016 respectively to coincide with the Christmas shopping rush, especially Black Friday and Cyber Monday. As shopping habits trended towards online retailers, coupled with the popularity of voice recognition software, this was the perfect recipe for the FBI to gain access to the conversations of millions of Americans, while serving to line the pockets of global monopolies and their possible ties to deep state forces, as we discussed in our previous episodes about the Illuminati. So, any thoughts? Has that cleared things up, made things more complicated?
I've got an idea. I'm going to let John go first.
Ooh, using John's tactic against him.
He does it every week. I'm used to it now.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I went last.
I can go first if you want.
No, it's all right.
No, we'll mix it up. I'll go first.
All right. I think I do know.
The tough thing with this game is like you think clearly it's not true, but then you got to remember it. We're not judging that. But I just think Calum's clearly enjoys the film. It's a Wonderful Life. So I think he's wanted to think up a conspiracy based off that. And I feel like he slipped up a little bit because he's gone and said it's the FBI, and surely if it's to do with communism, it would be CIA. So I think Calum's had a little slip up there, and as he's enjoyed I think he's done well to get all the detail he has out of it. But to be fair, I can see how it could be construed as anti-communist, but he should have said the old CIA. So I'm gonna go for It's a Wonderful Life.
Very interesting. What about you, John? Has that reinforced your beliefs or offers a new perspective?
No, it hasn't actually. I don't know. That was actually the first one I ruled out because I felt like there was almost too much detail in it. If you've gone to those lengths to make that one up, it's impressive and you deserve the win.
Ooh.
By the same logic, I felt I was going to go that the last one was the conspiracy, the Amazon Echo one, because I feel like we've kind of talked a bit about that before, about them spying on you and stuff. And as much as that almost certainly is a theory along those lines out there, I don't know whether someone will have made the link Christmas. So yeah, I'm going to go with that one is the conspiracy.
Right, final answers then, you happy? Locking in?
Yeah.
Right ho, I can reveal that it is a win for conspiracy. I have managed to fool one of you. Ooh. And you'll be maybe surprised to know, maybe not surprised, but our winner this week, because one of you has guessed the incorrect conspiracy theory, the conspiracy, and that is John. John has correctly identified that the Operation Santa Claus was in fact a conspiracy made up by me. And he's right, we have talked about the voice recognition, smart speakers, in a technology episode, I believe, and it was basically around the same. They're listening in on your conversations by the government, but it was a bit of a lucky Google. It came into my head. I thought, if these released around December time, I'm in the money here. And they did. So, not because it's the most popular time to release a new piece of technology for the Christmas rush, but, great for a conspiracy. And Luke's logic, well, it might seem sound, but
not,
if you look,
it's not sound at all. I've just realised that
you forget conspiracy theories aren't war.
I've also just realised that the FBI obviously were huge on anti-communism, not just the CIA.
It's federal,
yeah,
so
it's anti-communism within America, isn't it? Which this film was.
Yeah.
My bad.
And look it up, and it's an actual. Apparently, the FBI agent enjoyed the film, but did notice some problematic elements. That being the depression of Mr. Bailey, thought to be inspiring communist tendencies amongst the public. It's not really the threat it used to be, I say, apart from maybe amongst your young student body, but they'll grow out of that in a few years once they get their first paycheck.
Once they see the tax.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I enjoyed researching those theories for conspiracy. Another good episode there. Shedding some new light on Christmas, I think. Hopefully it doesn't sour anyone's enjoyment of one of the biggest holidays in the world. Certainly my favourite time of year. And we'll wrap things off by wishing you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and hopefully we'll bring more Co-Conspirators content to you in 2021. And before we go, I will depart with the message to keep challenging the status quo, even when your granddad is lecturing you about coronavirus over the Christmas dinner table.
All right, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.